In this video, you will learn how to model the multiplication of integers with counters and on a number line. Before we start with any examples, it's important to understand that multiplication is repeated addition. Let's look at 5 times 2 to help you understand what I mean. 5 times 2 means 5 copies of 2. We're actually going to start with 0, plus 2, plus 2, plus 2, plus 2, plus 2. This is equal to positive 10. Example number 1, 3 times 4. 3 times 4 means 3 copies of 4. We'll start with 0 and add 4 3 times. 4 plus 4 plus 4. And if we count all of these counters up, we have 12 positive counters. So 3 times 4 equals 12. Example number 2, 3 times negative 4. Remember, multiplication is repeated addition. So we'll start with 0, and then we'll add negative 4 3 times. Negative 4 plus negative 4 plus negative 4. If we add all these counters up, we get 12 negatives, negative 12. So 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. Example number 3, negative 3 times 4. We know that multiplication is repeated addition, so this means we would add negative 3 copies of 4. But we know that adding a negative is like subtracting. So instead of adding negative 3 copies, we can instead remove 3 copies of 4. The repeated addition, or in this case, subtraction, would look like this. Start with 0, and then subtract 4, minus 4, minus 4. But how are we going to remove 4 counters from 0? Well, we can start with what we call a sea of zeros. Here's our sea of zeros. Remember, a positive and a negative counter, a yellow and a red, makes 0, so it's called a zero pair. If we just have a whole bunch of 0 pairs, we're really just starting with 0. So now we can remove 4 3 times. So let's start. Let's remove the first 4 and minus another 4 and a third 4. Now we have removed 4 3 times, but we have a whole bunch of zeros still. Here they are right here. Now we don't need these anymore, so let's get rid of them. So here you can see what's remaining, negative 12. Negative 3 times 4 equals negative 12. Example number 4, negative 3 times negative 4. So this means we're going to add negative 3 copies of negative 4. That's a lot of negatives. So let's change that to remove 3 copies of negative 4. We can write that out as minus negative 4, minus negative 4, minus negative 4. Then we need to start with 0, so we will put out our sea of zeros. And then we can start removing negative 4 each time. There's one group of negative 4, and a second group, and then the third group of negative 4. Now let's get rid of all the zeros. And you can see that we have 12 positive counters left. So it's actually equal to positive 12. So that might seem a little bit weird. Let's take a look at that subtracting a negative thing real quick. Remember how subtracting a negative is actually the same thing as adding a positive? So if we look at it this way, we can really easily see why negative 3 times negative 4 is actually positive 12. All right, let's take a look at the actual rules for multiplying integers. If you are multiplying two numbers that are the same signs, meaning they're both positive or they're both negative, then your product or your answer is going to be positive. Same signs, positive. However, if you're multiplying two numbers with different signs, one is positive, one is negative, or vice versa, the first one's negative, the second one's positive, then your answer or your product is negative. Different signs, negative. Where this sometimes gets a little confusing is if you're multiplying more than two numbers together. You have to pay attention to how many of them are negative. Let's look at -1 times -1 to start. Two negatives multiplied together make a positive. But if we stick another negative in there, then that changes our product to negative. -1 times -1 times -1 is -1. Now look what happens if we put another one in. -1 times -1 makes +1. Then when we multiplied it by -1 again, it was -1. Then when we multiply it by -1 again, it becomes +1 again. Are you seeing the pattern? With a fifth negative, our answer is negative again. And then when we add a sixth negative in there, the answer again becomes positive. So what you should be able to figure out from this is if you have an even number of negatives that you're multiplying together, like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, etc., then basically they buddy up and the two negatives become positive. So an even number of negatives multiplied together makes a positive product. But multiplying an odd number of negatives together will give you a negative product. Now you should know how to model the multiplication of integers. Thanks for watching.